Hey, quick pre-roll shout out to OnWeCaster, the open source platform we use to record our podcast episodes with guests. They support open source charity programs like Innovate for Vegas Foundation by offering their platform for free, and for that we thank them. Visit ecaster.com, that's ECASTR.com, for more information and to try them out. Now, on with the show. Hey there, welcome to episode 26 of Let's Innovate for Vegas, the audio program about innovating right here in fabulous Las Vegas. Today I'm joined by a very special person. That's what the Olympics tell me. I've known him for 10 years. I don't know how he ended up in Vegas. We'll find out. But I'd like to introduce you all to the one and only Alex Just.
Hey,
comedian extraordinaire. Hey, Alex.
Hey.
I almost said just Alex, but it's Alex Just. I got to get that straight. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's the social media is just Alex Comedy, by the way. But that's like a joke on the name I made up. So
it's who understands comedy better than you, right?
Right.
And today I'm calling the show "Making Space Funny." I don't know if you liked that title; it could change, but "Making Space Funny." That's regarding Space Apps Challenge. We'll get to that in a second, but I'd like to start, as I always do with all my podcasts, by letting you tell us who is Just Alex. Alex Just. Say it to
Yeah. So you know me from moving to Vegas about 10 years ago. We met. I was a software entrepreneur, full stack developer. Shortly after moving there, I started working as a consultant, specifically doing agile transformations. The whole time, though, I was doing comedy once I was in Vegas. And we can talk about how I got into that because it did come from the tech side, actually. That was sort of the motivation. But basically, I have a mathematics major from Caltech, a Bachelor of Science. And really, so what am I? I guess I'm a comedian, but also trying to be a science communicator and push people toward, open curiosity and innovation. Because I don't think you can really... Comedy's a distraction, right? That's sort of what you're offering when you're putting out there. What's my value proposition? Well, something to think about besides the void.
Sure.
But whereas if you want to have it do some good in the world and you want to have a hook, I'm trying to push for doing more corporate things that might educate. I'm trying to put videos about math and science and STEM stuff on my TikTok that are funny but educational, things like that.
Is there enough comedy to fill the void? That's the question.
Yeah, I think absurdism is the only valid position probably. But I don't know that we have enough there. I think you've got to make your own. I think you've got to find it in the void.
Sure. And I will say I didn't meet you in this context, but after we had met, and I want to say it was, I remember talking to you at Atomic, but I don't remember exactly where we met, 10 years ago, approximately,
Right.
In the downtown project days, which we'll get to in a second. But I will say, I did some open mic comedy recently, a couple months ago, and one of my jokes was about my own resume, and I compared my social media profile to others, because I said I only got JavaScript and SQL, and they got, and I won't say because it wasn't exactly clean, but I said I got to up my game. Because tech is this like, oh, those people are doing the tech, and we don't, I always tell people, I used to drive a Volkswagen Bug. I don't know what kind of car you had when you were younger. You could roll your sleeves up and take that car apart pretty easily. So it's really easy to understand how your use of this particular technology, how it worked, how you could fix it. Nobody has that today. Like, it's completely absent. So I think technology has become this mystery, an enigma perhaps. And everybody just goes, I don't know. I just use my iPhone. That's all I know.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things, like, I thought I was a tech kid growing up in Maine, and then, because I could sit down and mess with Adobe Photoshop I didn't take a class, and I just wasn't afraid to tinker with our Tandy 1000, or whatever we had. I think I had a Windows machine by then, by 96. And then I get to Caltech and people are like Unix. And I was like, what is that? I didn't even know there's another option. And, I learned just how far kind of behind I was on a lot of the fundamentals and the actual real stuff. So even you can think you know where you are and have this Dunning-Kruger effect of like, no, you don't know where you are at all.
Right. When I was 12 years old, I was 12 years old, and I was helping a friend, like my mom's friend's friend, was and probably still is blind, not 100%, but mostly. She could barely kind of make out shadows on a CRT, cathode ray tube. That's one of those big glass bottles of vacuum for the kids out there. And so she said, "Hey, I'm learning Pascal at the community college. Can you help me, be the eyes and the typing?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So when I was 12, I was learning Pascal on a VAX.
Oh, nice.
And I'm not even gonna try to explain that. So the VAX. So when I got to Harvey Mudd College, we stole the Caltech cannon, by the way. That might come up later. And when I say we, not me, I didn't do it, but I do know the person who did. So when I got to Mudd, HMC VAX was the computer that everybody got their first account on. So I was like, oh, I've used this before. That was shocking to me that I was already there.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, I think most people don't. They don't get exposed to this stuff. When you said Tandy 1000, I kind of chuckled. There's all kinds of retro movement going on now on getting your old 8-bit machine to work, Z80s and 6502s. And I always tell people I did all kinds of coding on microcontrollers, so 68HC11, 8051. And they're like, what is that? And I said, I know. Tell me about it. That's the state of our modernity. But anyway,
I think that's changed though. I think one of the great things the internet did, like on a large scale, is sort of connect people. It meant you could be in a niche and find the rest of that niche, but also it did some level setting, right? You thought you were the best at Super Smash Brothers because you were the best in your neighborhood, and then you get there and then whatever. And so it's kind of knowing where you're at and where your skill is actually at globally, and sort of checking you on that, I think is an interesting thing that there was a lot of like localized delusion before that doesn't exist as much anymore.
I was a arcade kid when I was younger.
Oh, I was an arcade rat. Yeah.
And like my here's a roll of quarters, Daddy. Oh, okay. I'll see you later. So I would hang out at various, and it was always like you had to have your three letter thing to put on the leaderboards and all that stuff. And I kind of wonder, while I do agree with you, I would say there is also something to be said. I mean, maybe it's like semifinals, right? Like having that local rep or being able to post your initials and claim some sort of expertise at Missile Command or whatever. And kids, I'm not even going to try that one either. Missile Command or Centipede or the later, what was that Laserdisc game with the guy?
You're talking about Dragon's Lair.
Dragon's Lair, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
no, all of
nice.
these things. The arcade culture of like one-upsmanship and a local high score list, that's awesome. That is very cool. And even just like sort of the pickup basketball thing of like you put your quarter on the rail to be next to Street Fighter, and you got people.
Classic. Yeah.
I mean, that existed when I moved to Austin right before Vegas. There was Kung Fu Saloon had Monday night free game night, and there was like a line for Street Fighter and people taking it kind of seriously. And I definitely was right behind a dude that after he lost, he punched the top glass on the Street Fighter machine and shattered it.
Nice.
Well, because these are grown adults. It's not kids anymore here. But yeah, I was an arcade rat, and I used to. And Dragon's Lair was awesome. Come on, man. That was
Dragon's Lair. We used to play Ikari Warriors, and even Berserk was a random. Like, what is that? But it was fun. When gaming was fun, and you could use an 8-bit although 68,000 was the big video game behemoth, I guess, when it started. I don't know. I think Dragon's Lair might have been 68,000 processor.
Oh yeah, I don't know what that was running. I mean, I didn't see a Dragon's Lair 1 for decades, but Dragon's Lair
Yeah.
2 came out when I was like peak arcading, and there was one guy who would come in and like almost beat it every day because on the final level you couldn't continue. So you had to get it
Right,
perfect,
right.
right? We're talking about a game where it's like it's a cartoon that's playing, but your sword or some element will like flash golden quickly, and you have to hit the sword button or the joystick in that direction to not then go into an animation where you die. That's how Dragon's Lair was, and it was all wacky
So
and done by the Bluth company, which was All Dogs Go to Heaven. And those people, they had a very particular animation style that was like going against Disney for a while there with that other as another studio.
I knew none of this, but it was essentially a choose your own adventure. Like you'd pick, option A
Yeah,
or B.
but you had to do it with timing. Yeah, you had to,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But it wasn't today. Everybody's like, oh, it's only doing 300 frames per second, and with the HDR or whatever. So yeah, today the expectation, the bar has been raised astronomically high. But back in those days, back in our day, yeah, good times. And then so just to wrap up, so you were here in Vegas during the downtown project days. That's when I met you, and then you hit the road, and I never saw you again. So when did you venture out?
Right.
Escape the comedy.
So actually, right before, I mean, I was on the road a lot. The Agile consulting thing took me to a lot of different countries. Okay. It was sort of my angle was, hey, I don't have family to neglect, but I've got that's a little rare for the level of experience I had. And so they started being like, oh, this is our guy to send to India. And I was in Tokyo for 2 months. And so basically, COVID was 2020. So 2019, my landlord was annoying me. I mean, it got real bad. I don't even want to say, but Arts District apartments, don't live there. And I was just out of the country so much that I said, screw it. I ended my lease and I was like, I'll just live in hotels. I mean, the client's paying for it most of the time. And if I'm going to save money on this. And then COVID hit and I had 1.5 million Marriott points to use to stay. I was up in Alaska at first when that happened. I started driving comedy up there. I was the first person to pivot and do that. There was one guy that was already doing it just as a lark. But in Denver. But that was good. And then I've just been winging it since then. So I've been mobile. I mean, I have a place in Vegas at my old business partner's house where I have a room I can stay in, But if I'm working, I'm gone. So I have a home base, but if I'm working, I'm out on the road. And it's good. I mean, it's nice. I like rambling and I'm a minimalist. So not owning things is nice. It suits my lifestyle.
It is, yeah. Owning stuff is a pain. Shortly after we met, very shortly. I had lived here for under 6 months, and I took a job with Intel, the chip company. Not often here in Vegas, people would immediately assume a military intelligence of some sort, but Intel Corporation. My job starting. So I took the job, had my new employee orientation in February of 2014, and in April, end of March, I was on a plane to Ireland, and I was a world traveler, 47 hackathons. I was on a reality show. So I was always, as you've described, I was always mobile. So Vegas as a home base. And similarly, I would always tell Lyft and Uber were just catching on. So I would jump in a Lyft car to go to the airport. And they're like, where are you headed at 4 a.m? And I said, I got a hackathon in wherever, Cambridge or heading to France, whatever it was. And they're like, man, I wish I could travel. How do you? And I said, I have no kids, no pets, no plans.
Yeah.
That's the way to go. So yeah, and Vegas is a great home base because the travel in and out of this airport here, whatever they call it nowadays, is pretty easy.
It's McCarran to me. It's McCarran to me. I don't even know who McCarran is, but
apparently he was a bad person.
Oh, probably. I mean, but it's weird to say Harry Reid. Okay, what about LAS? What if we totally just use the code? Let's just use the code.
Yeah, I do that too. I mean, LAS, it is always going to be LAS. And even though it's not in Las Vegas, which is funny, that confuses people a lot. And
that's airports, though. Almost that. then they don't know about airports. That's not even a weird Vegas thing, right? The fact that most of it's paradise and all this other stuff, but like most airports are in some technically not Houston or whatever it is, you know.
But the casual person, I've had people get upset with me for claiming that I am in Las Vegas when they're like, no, I'm in Las Vegas. And like, you're on the Strip. I am in the city of Las Vegas. And they actually get upset about it. I don't understand that. But yeah, no kids, no pets, no plans, world travel, home base in Vegas, easy to get in and out of. Although I do say LAS is my favorite departure airport.
Oh yeah.
Not necessarily my favorite arrival airport, but.
Okay, what's your favorite arrival airport?
So far, Dublin is way up there. I would go to so I moved here after I had a house fire, as I've told many people over the years. So I'll leave that there. But I always say if I have another fire, I will move to Dublin next. That would be the place I would go.
But you just like being in Dublin. There's nothing about landing at that airport that's special.
Oh, the airport is fine too. Yeah. Although I will say they do have I think they still have it, the customs pre-check, so you don't have to go through customs when you arrive domestically. You can do it in Dublin. But as far as arrival, like I always managed to fly through Dublin Airport, DUB,
okay.
no matter where I was going in Europe. So it's funny how that happened. So I would spend a weekend in downtown.
Yeah,
good times.
I was not a fan of Dublin.
Well,
yeah. Well, the weird thing was there was, I did some comedy shows there, and we're out on the street because you're kind of just drinking. There's like tables outside, and from what I could tell downtown, there's just dudes asking for change. Like it was every 5 minutes. It was literally like you couldn't stand there talking for five, and it wasn't even that they were like necessarily destitute. Like that guy, once he got enough, would then be next to you at the bar, and they were just doing a circuit of all the bars. You know what I mean? Like these, like they were addicted to alcohol, but not like living on the street needy or anything. And it was just
sure.
It just seemed like an annoying scene to drink in. That's all. You probably I was only there 3 nights.
Okay, I was in I was in Ireland at least 15 times that I'm aware of.
Oh wow, okay.
For a couple days, or my first was 5 weeks, and so I became a regular at various places, and to this day I'm still in touch with some of the barmen and so on. I would ask if you were on the north side, or if you were in Temple Bar, or if you were on Grafton. There's different parts of the Dublin
I was
city
probably
center.
I was right where the comedy club was, the comedy cellar there. So that's just at the International. Is that what it's called? I think. Anyway,
But yeah,
we're getting into Dublin.
There were some
much.
dodgy spots. Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's possible, but yeah.
I like walking to and from airports when I can, and I actually walked from downtown Dublin to the airport. It was about 10K, and I on the way. But you always see something that there's always some little thing. Someone had done some Colm Meaney, is that how you say it? Meaney fan art. O'Brien from Star Trek TNG and Deep Space Nine. And they had painted an electrical ball. Apparently there's a snack over there called Meanies or something. And so they made like a bag of like Colm Meanies or whatever. And I don't know, it was just, I'm a huge Deep Space Nine fan. So I just was like, okay,
nice. There's
always something. I'll see like a weird animal or something because no one's walking to the airport.
That is, whenever I went there, I was always there for a while. I was traveling for a long time, so I never had just the carry-on, but that would be interesting. I used to walk. I tried to avoid getting. We're getting off topic here, but public transportation in Vegas being what it is, it's always on my mind. I used to take public transit whenever I could in Vegas, so I tried to avoid. I never rented a car because they drive on the bizarre side of the street. But and I always told people, I don't know if I could do it, but I don't want to train on other people. I don't want to be running into people. But yeah, it's an interesting. So the bottom line is that being an innovator, you get to travel, which is nice, and so we can leave Dublin for another time. But that was always my favorite thing here. So like I said, when we first met, I was basically on the road all the time, and I was going to say, and this moves nicely into the next things I have noted. So I did open mic. The first time ever was Alex. Alex. What is your name? Alex Just.
At the dive bar.
So, I knew Alex, so I'm gonna mix those up.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's what I used to go by.
But the dive bar down by UNLV, I think I did it twice there, and both times were awful.
Yeah.
That's fair to say. But although my opener about the Turkish girlfriend thing, I still use that sometimes. That one actually does kind of work. But the take home, I did it mostly because in my public speaking at hackathons and on the road in general, at maker fairs and other events, and just moving around a lot, interacting with people, I wanted to feel more comfortable talking about what I was talking about. And so when you try open mic, you are kind of putting yourself out there, and it could go badly. So I got that out of the way. But after that, and I always tell people, you are the expert in what you're talking about most of the time, right? If you get up to make a presentation about something that you've been doing research on, or your startup or anything, and they're here because they don't know, they're going to listen to you. Some people may judge you on your business model or your technology, but in general, you're presenting your ideas to a captive audience. They're interested in what you have to say. So there's really no reason to be nervous. There's no reason to feel like you're being judged. Not true in an open mic. They're there to kill you, to throw things at you. So once you get that out of your system, you're like, oh, I can talk about Arduino sensor wiring, or I can talk about the Intel Edison. I can tell these stories about how things work quite comfortably. So to me, it was super valuable. Second order, highly valuable, right? As a comedian, my future is dim, but
well, no, and that was the thing. I'd done like a couple talent competitions at the end of high school. I'd done a few, like I lived in Chicago in '99, and there was a place that gave you free beer if you did their open mic, like for the whole night. And so I just did my high school act just to get the free beer on Wednesdays there. But I'd never really taken it seriously and tried to like write jokes or anything. But I knew what it was like. And then as an entrepreneur, I was going to these meetups, and I was pitching, and I was speaking at South by Southwest. Like we presented one time, I got signed up to do it again. And I knew I was never afraid to get up there, but that didn't mean I had no nerves once I was. And I knew, I'm like, I am better than my technology peers at this speaking stuff by a lot, you know. Maybe I should try and double down on that. And I knew that the most brutal way to desensitize yourself was stand up, because it's not karaoke. There's no one else's song. You're alone. There's no band with you. It is you up there. And the thing I was lacking was I would give a presentation or something, and people would go, that was great. And then I would realize, and they say, oh, like this and this. And I'd realize that I wasn't present during it. That in fact, I remembered very little about being up there because my brain was on full, like, you're doing this mode. And that's what I wanted to get out of me is the ability to not only present something smoothly that's practiced, but be comfortable enough and present enough to see what's going on in the crowd, to pivot, to, you know, react to their reactions to me, and actually make it something that's more than just hitting play on a presentation. Yes.
And I've knowing your material, whatever it is immensely helpful. And so for the past year, sorry, my computer is telling me something here. For the past year and a half, we've been doing pitch workout rooms here. So it's taking the open mic concept and doing pitch your startup idea. Sure. And it would be, you don't even need a slide deck. Just stand up and start talking. Wave your hands around or gesture, or tell a story. And I found, so because of the time, we had a 1 hour time slot at a monthly event here called Tech Alley. So I said, okay, we'll do 5 minutes of pitching, 5 minutes of constructive feedback. Don't be mean, but that was a lesson I learned. But don't be mean, but give feedback either about the presentation itself or about the idea. Don't turn it into a business model discussion. That's for later. Do it at the rest of the day, because we would do it at 9 a.m. And I found the people that were trying to give a presentation had never had to do it in a 5-minute time window. So when you have a tight constraint like that, they were thrown way off. And I had seen many cases where someone would do it the first time and it was a mess. They were reading, they were unprepared, they were nervous because they didn't know their own material. The second time they would do it a month or two later, infinitely better because they said, yeah, I'd never really done the presentation like that in front of a group of people who were going to tell me what I did wrong. So the value proposition was very obvious to people as they were trying it. So that was great.
Yeah.
And so I would always tell people the upside of, even though you might get booed or you might, although I will say Wise Guys, where I did my most recent three-week interval, they don't really boo a lot. You can bomb and they kind of just go, kind of groaners, not really booing. Your room was much tougher. But
Yeah. Well, the dive bar is sort of almost intentionally harsh. Well, only because
aptly
I
named.
don't think we could make it less harsh. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's about getting that desensitization. Now, I'm not telling everyone that wants to be a better speaker to go to comedy open mics and clog them up with your BS. But, well, no, I mean, look, this is what I did. I went in and I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew there were some traps. I knew you can just start like making just the 3 other comics at the open mic laugh in the back and things like that. And I said to myself, I'm not going to repeat jokes. I'm going to try and write new stuff every time, except for maybe if I get something that works, I'll lead off with that to be comfortable. But I'm really here to get desensitized. I'm here distinctly not to try comedy. I mean, yeah, I'm doing that, but whatever. And then I spoke at South by Southwest. That went well. I get back to Vegas, and the only people I knew were basically from the open mics. I started right when I got there, so I kept going.
Right.
I then go back to visit Austin because I used to live there, and everyone leaves for South by Southwest because it takes over everything, just to see some friends. And one of my friends who was a comedian was like, come out to the mics. And that was the first time I'd ever really gone, what's my best 5 minutes? And here I'm doing it in front of people who haven't heard it before instead of the same 10 comics every week.
Right.
And I was getting booking requests from these Austin people that are running stuff. And that's when I came back to Vegas, was like, all right, now I have external validation. But you said something interesting there that people said, oh, I never really did this in front of a group and got feedback. Well, that worries me about you as an entrepreneur if you're trying to do a pitch deck. Like,
yes.
You are not, I mean, look, you can say that Agile and all this stuff has gotten too big or that people do things wrong, but like you need to be empirical and experimental if you're an entrepreneur. And you need to be thinking at all times, what are my assumptions and how do I test them? How do I fail fast and how do I get feedback? And that is every aspect of everything that you're doing, whether it's your marketing proposal or whatever. And I don't care if you're alone in a cave with just ChatGPT, do something to get feedback that's outside your own head and outside your own organization.
Something I've found in doing this, we probably noticed this before, but I noticed it specifically in this exercise over the last year and a half. So we started it literally January of 2022 was the first time we did an open mic for pitches. And we had a full room. We had 6 people. So that was the full hour, 10 minutes each, right? People didn't quite get the feedback thing. They're like, so is this really a valid business model? Like, that's not the purpose of this. We're supposed to talk about, eventually it was, like, hey, we only got 5 minutes. So you have the rest of the day to talk to them about their business model, talk about the slide deck, talk about their cadence, talk about their language. But yeah, people were not familiar with telling the story. And you and I have talked about this briefly. I try to liken it to when a bit goes wrong, right? You've probably had this happen all the time. All of mine have gone wrong, so I got this one. But if you're telling a joke and you mess up the punchline, the person listening to the joke is disappointed, and you can see the look on their face. Like, this is where the audience interaction. You can see that you have lost them. They jumped off the train, right? So you could have a great joke, and they're waiting for that punchline, and then you mess it up, and you have to correct yourself. You're like, oh, but I mean this and that. They're gone. They're already off. Now, when you're pitching your startup, if people can't read your slides, if you have like red text on a dark blue background, or if you have very small text, or the worst, the death knell, a wall of text. And I like writing, but you cannot have a slide with who's the Apple guy? I can't remember his name. Kawasaki. Kawasaki. Is that his name? Steve Kawasaki? No.
What?
Anyway, not Kawasaki. I can't remember his name. The guy
Steve
from Apple.
Jobs?
No. He was their like chief evangelist. He was like,
I don't. Yeah, I was never.
It's not Kawasaki. I'm sorry.
So okay. Anyway,
I'm trying not to. I'm not.
People,
I'm not.
Your audience
mixing up
has the
Japanese
internet.
names.
They can look it up. Yeah.
He but he would always say your slides should never have more than like 5 or 10 words on them.
Yeah.
And that's completely true. So I would have people getting up there with, a dissertation in slide form, and you're like, and there's a professor at MIT, he's passed away and I cannot remember his name, but he had a how to talk to people course. Quote this, you can write this, you can tattoo it on your lower back if you want. If people are reading their slides, they're not listening to you. So, and they did an actual study. They had people do the same exact presentation with content that was distracting on the slides and content that was complimentary. The retention and attention were, astronomically better if your slides are not pulling their attention away. So if you take people out of the moment, they don't follow you on your journey. And at the end, they're like, wait, I don't even know what I was listening to. I don't know if this is even interesting. So I like to see people practicing that.
Yeah, in the Agile courses, there were people fighting for like no slides, and they would do the drawing on the thing, and it's a bit of a parlor trick, but I guess that holds some attention, but it slowed things down. I mean, I've had slides where I think there's an argument for more text if the deck is supposed to be a bit of a reference afterwards, and that's the only excuse. And even then, you should not be reading that slide to them that is wordy or anything, right? It should be, you should graphically have what they need to see and what you're talking about, and maybe some detail that they could look at later. And there's a cost for it. You're absolutely right. There's an attention cost for that you need to understand. Yeah.
There's a difference between a conversational deck and and one of the inspirations for this was that there was every 2 months there was a pitch night here, 3 or 4 pitches. It's supposed to be 7.5 minutes. They would go on for 25. And there was just rambling, and there's reading of slides, and there's walls of text, and this and that. And at the end, there was a panel, and I think it was the second time I went because it was November, and by December I said, we got to do practicing of the pitches. This is ridiculous. And then January we started 2022. After 25 minutes, the panelists were asking questions. They clearly were just, they were not in the moment. So they're asking questions. You're like, this was answered in the first 3 minutes. Of course, that was yesterday at this point. So yeah, holding attention. You want to bring people along. We can go Mike Birbiglia. You want to tell a story where at the end, everybody's still with you and you get to the funny ending and you're like, and everybody's there.
The save the cat hero's journey thing for sure. I mean, let me put it this way. When the guy in my company that was viewed as our best trainer and speaker, who'd done like TEDx. He's trying to be like a tech guru type guy, basically. He did a TEDx thing, and and everyone's like, he's high energy, he's high-fiving everyone, he's one of these guys, right? I trained with him, and there was one learning module we were doing, and I'm looking at the crowd, and they are just, every single brow is furrowed. They are confused by what he's saying. They're not getting it.
Right.
And then we luckily went to a break right afterwards. And I said to him, man, we've got to see if we got to come back and ask what questions they have. Because I could see that they have questions that they're not asking. And he was like, oh, really? Right. What do you mean? And then I remember we had our big quarterly gathering, and we were in a long room that was kind of shallow. And he gave a presentation at that. And I saw that when he presents, is looking like a half of like 6 inches above everyone's heads. Like, he is not comfortable meeting eye contact and looking at a crowd and being present like that. And that was a massive weakness, because if it didn't land, he had no clue. He was not getting any data back.
Right.
And I didn't understand how that happened in that first case till I saw that he was sort of using that technique to be a better speaker, but that is going to cap you. And if anything, like I said, the whole reason I did stand up was I think I can give a great presentation, but why are they in the damn room with me? Right. You got to use that. You're getting like the awesome thing about stand up versus music. I guess people are dancing and they're grooving to it or whatever, but we have instant feedback on every little moment. I'm expecting a reaction or a gasp, or them to be silent, or them to laugh, or them to go huh or groan, and you're getting that real time the whole time. You have that when you're speaking. You've got to be present enough, and that's why I say always record. Because if I say something differently, if I write on stage, I don't want to have to then lose that presence for my next joke I'm going to tell by going, oh, that worked, I got to remember that. No, I am not thinking about that at all. It's on my phone. I'm always recording at least audio, because when I'm performing, I shouldn't be editing and self-evaluating.
Right. Yeah. Well, not actively, I guess. I mean,
No. I'm looking at their reception to it, but
exactly.
I don't want to I don't want to be like, ooh, remember that for later, Alex. No, it's already there.
And speaking of phones, I did look while you were speaking earlier. Guy Kawasaki. So I was close. Guy Kawasaki.
Ah, okay.
So famous evangelist from Apple.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I had an opportunity to be in a room at R&D 4, I think, when I worked at Apple a long time ago. Really, really strong presence. A little bit of an Apple fanboy, if you ask me, but he was, he was a very interesting character and a really good stage presence. And that's why he had the job, I suppose, or vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
But I found also, and this is key. This is something to learn at a hackathon if you want to pursue any of this stuff, is to be able to tell the story, to listen to the room. But what I started hearing from the pitch workout room people who were not, well, first of all, it was at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'd get the 9 o'clock is so early. And I said, maybe you're not ready for this.
Yeah.
Because I would hear other things like, I'm so tired of talking about it. No, you should never utter those words. You should be talking about this any opportunity you have. If this is what you want to do, you got to be excited. You got to be excited about your jokes. You got to be excited about your music, your startup. So you got to take these opportunities. And then you need to, as you've said, we were just saying, you got to read the room, because these people are taking their time. In the case of the pitch workout room, they're there. They are also there at 9 o'clock in the morning. So your audience at an open mic that maybe paid $5 or nothing, they are taking a journey with you where it may not go well, right? They're spending money and their time, and your jokes may not land. They're telling you what you need to improve on. They're going to point out things by furrowing their brows or groaning or booing or whatever. You should be able to capture that and use it rather than just saying, oh, I bombed. You should be thinking, I learned, right?
Oh, 100%.
That's what you're saying. And so same goes if you're pitching your idea and people are confused, or at the end, they're asking weird questions like, so what are you working on? That's happened. Not for me. I've been able to myself, a whole humble brag, I've been able to pretty much nail 5 minutes without, plus or minus 10 seconds without having to look at the clock, right? So you kind of get a feel for it after a while. That's another reason to practice, because if you go, and I'm pontificating a little bit here, but if you go to pitch your idea in front of some people with checkbooks and they say you have 10 minutes and you're going past 15 to 20, you're now taking their time. You're taking their time from them.
Yes.
They may not appreciate that because you don't follow the simple request, the rules, if you will. If you can't do that, are you going to listen when they tell you, like, hey, we gave you $25 million and you're not listening to our advice, that kind of thing. So it's
a bad signal. Professionalism is always, look, I mean, this happens in comedy too, right? There's just like people who are talented and have the charisma, as the kids say, but where they can get away with anything. But you might as well be as professional and buttoned down as you can, because you don't want to have to rely on magic effect, on intangible greatness per se, do you? Yeah.
Well, and there's an unexpected, and I called the pitch workout room because of the time constraint. I called it the tight 5. You do your 5 minutes. Don't talk about money because nobody here has a checkbook. They're just people willing to give you their feedback for free. So leave out the ask at the end or the TAMs and all this other silliness. Just talk about your idea and be able to tell your story, and they'll tell you how that worked. By way of example, I did the very first one, the first time, first speaker back in January last year. The feedback I got was the picture on your third slide would go better if it was it was later. He said it should go in the third slide. So I got feedback about the construction of my presentation, and I said, that's great. I've never given this particular presentation as it is constructed in front of people. So that was amazing feedback. Perfect. What people do not practice for is, and I call it the wild pitch, which is, today the projector is broken, so you're going to have to wing it without your slides. What?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, the mic is out. The sound system is out here at the comedy club, so you're going to have to do stage presence. You're going to have to project. That could happen, right?
Yeah.
And if you're completely unprepared for that, And then again, as you said, to be able to take audience feedback during the pitch workout room, you get it after more so, but during, yeah, you're getting these responses. I was making a presentation one time, and we're not going to talk about presentations for the whole show here. Sorry, but
Right.
I knew the material. It was in college. I was giving a clinic presentation. I was talking about our project, and the person that was I can't remember if we had. I think we had over transparencies with an overhead projector. If that these are, I may as well be talking about stone tools. But we had the presentation, and the person that was switching the slides for me swapped 2 slides. So I'm talking because I know the presentation, and everyone in the room is looking at me with like a head tilt. And I turn and I look at the slide at the screen and I go, oh, or we could talk about, and I switched to the other part of the presentation. Because I knew the presentation, I was able to react to that, kind of get a little chuckle out of it. And go, oh, okay. Clearly I knew what I was talking about. So now the question is, are they going to jump back on with me? And they did, because I kind of changed tracks smoothly. And so if you know your material well enough, you've practiced
Yes.
enough, and you're confident and comfortable, that kind of feedback, you can roll with it and turn it into something even better.
Yes,
In
for
my
sure.
opinion.
Yeah. That was, I mean, I've had, especially with executives when we were doing leadership workshops, you'd get a certain personality type that would just derail and be like, I know you got a presentation, but tell me this, And we're like, all right, you have a learning backlog. And every time you have a question, if you don't want to disrupt the presentation, just put it up there. And if we don't get to it, and we'd use that technique for our normal classes, but you get some people, they're like, no. And so you've got to know where everything is and go, okay, I'm going to jump to this now. I'm going to jump to this now. What do they actually need to learn? What do they need to know? And in comedy, you learn to do that on your feet, because maybe you get into a little bit of crowd work, or you interact with someone and you've got to cut some time. Maybe you honestly, maybe you just have a set go really well. That, because there's too many laughs, can take easily in 7 minutes, you can lose 30 seconds on that.
Sure.
And you get the light, and it's a contest where you're going to get DQ'd if you go over the light, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things. And like you said, that pitch open mic is very similar. You respect everyone else's time, whether it's the investors or not. It's similar at a lot of open mics. It's just other comics, which aren't really good feedback in a way. In this case, they would be, I think, because they're other entrepreneurs.
Right. Exactly.
The other comics are like, they're not an easy laugh usually, and they're too focused on their presentation. You're going to have that second part where everyone there is that's listening to you, unless they've already gone, is thinking about what they're about to do, too much to be maybe fully present. But it doesn't matter. Half of what you're getting out of it is just doing it in front of live people in a room.
Absolutely.
Yourself,
Right.
even if you have no feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, and their nonverbal feedback is also useful. Again, so you should be paying attention.
I mean,
and you have to Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I mean, how about this? I want more feedback than just recording. Like, if I didn't feel the need to ask for privacy concerns, I would film the audience at every show, so that I could go back or use. I remember very early AI thing that Amazon had was like gender, age, race, current emotion based on photos for a thousandth of a penny, and you just send it. I remember just hearing that and being like, wow, apart from the privacy concerns, it'd be amazing to have a camera on the audience and be able to get demographics of who smiled and laughed at what joke and what part of what joke. Are you kidding me? That'd be great. But that's sort of, I mean, as someone who does this professionally, I'm saying that data seems so valuable to me that I might even go to that extent or I would have already coded that up if I didn't feel the need to be like, hey, audience, by the way, this is happening, and now you feel weird and think I'm weird.
Although I would push back on that slightly, because then you're almost like if you had ChatGPT write your whole set for you, you've taken yourself out of the equation. And then if you are using AI and image recognition and emotional computation and all, then you've taken yourself out of that response to the audience too.
I'm getting data. After the fact that I wasn't able to fully. It doesn't mean I have to act on it or be a total. Look, Sam Tallent, who wrote the novel on stand-up comedy, it's called Running the Light. It's the definitive work of fiction on stand-up now. No one's challenging that at this point. He was in Vegas when he wrote it. Good friend of mine. But I think he says that he doesn't consider comedy stand-up an art form. And I get where he's coming from. I mean, you're splitting hairs as semantics at some point. But I get where it's coming from because unlike a lot of other art, it is very, very iterative. It is more of a craft that's done with the audience because it's so iterative. Like they talk about audience capture when you're a social personality or an influencer or whatever, right? Like we are very much doing that. You get up with what you think is funny, and then it becomes something based on what people actually laugh at, and you get better and better at having the thing you think is funny, but bringing them along with that as you get more skill and learning how to get out what you think is funny about a thing to them. But the actual end format is very different from someone who writes a novel and then just publishes it, in terms of the artistic risk and sort of choices that are being made.
So I have this trope that I fall back on often, which I definitely learned from the hackathon time frame. So I was traveling around going to these hackathons, and I was, as an Intel employee, I represented the product that my team worked on. So I was in the lab, and I was also out in the field, which was a rarity at Intel.
Okay.
They were basically, you were either working with customers or engineering in a lab, but never both. That's crazy. Oh, okay. So I would get feedback like, that's such an amazing opportunity, which it was. So I would sit next to any 10 to 100-year-old, 10 to 70 really. Technically, 10 to 70, that is actually correct. Full range of makers and hackers out there in the world. And I always tell people, sit next to people using your stuff, listening to your comedy, eating your food, looking at your art, reading your story, anything. Sit next to them. If you think you're good at it, sit next to them. They'll tell you what you did wrong, right? So the opportunity to get that feedback can apply to most things. Art is what, some might push back and say, well, that's my creation and whatnot. But if you listen to people's feedback, they might say it would look better with a black background, or maybe those dogs should be using blue deck of cards instead of red, or whatever, right? Blue bicycle cards, perhaps. Yeah. So I think the opportunity to collect feedback is amazing. I'll use that word. But I almost wonder if going overboard, I'll say overboard. You're not saying overboard, but going overboard with detecting micro expressions. I mean, can we hook up people to
well, I don't think it's that. FM. I do a whole set. Everyone's in fMRI. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everybody put your headset on so I can get your brainwave, that kind of stuff. I think it's
what it is? You know what the desire is? It's that you only get so many audiences and so many situations. Sure. And they will be a bad audience, or the person before you will bomb. They're not warmed up. They're not even thinking, they have no trust in jokes because the past 10 minutes they've heard have let them down of oh, that seems like an interesting premise and you went nowhere with it.
Never go after trust. Dan Hugo.
Yeah, there you go. Comedy is about trust. They'll have no trust in comedy, just seeing you and hearing you. Yes. But, and what you're doing when you get started is fighting for the ability to practice, because getting time on stage is just that. It's the ability to practice, to practice those jokes and hone that act and get better. And it's not just out there for free. Everyone's fighting for a limited amount of time. And that's why we get paid almost nothing, is you've got people who would pay, I just did a show at Burger Rush in Tempe, Arizona. Go to Burger Rush if you want a good burger in Tempe. I got paid $200 for that gig. I sold some t-shirts, but there are people that if you told them, hey, you can do 45 minutes in front of 10 people at a burger restaurant, they would pay $200 to do that if they were rich and, just like a trust fund comic or something.
Sure.
So I think that's it. That's why I'm saying, ooh, I could get more data, because sometimes you're at a mic and there's one person who's a real audience member who hasn't heard your joke. And you're just happy to see if they laugh and what they laugh at. And so I think that's what I'm saying is, if I had full data on a whole audience, I'd be able to pick out some of that stuff and get more valuable feedback out of a worse audience or a sparser audience or something like that.
Sure.
But it's all a grain of salt though. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think, and so why are we talking about all this comedy stuff in the context of hackathons? Because, as we've also covered, telling your story, presenting your ideas, all of this factors into there, because sometimes you have to convince people to invest. Sometimes you have to convince your peers that your idea is valid. And in the case of the Space Apps Challenge, which we'll end on that more so, but Part of the competition, you'll be judged, just like in life, on what you finish for your project, and they call it storytelling. But you don't have to be a programmer to participate. This is not a laptops and Red Bull bro coders hackathon. Anybody can participate, and a substantial component is the storytelling, which is essentially take some data and present it in a way that's digestible by people about climate or space or growing food in space or whatever the various challenges are. So to be able to tell your story in front of people, even if this is your first time ever, if you participate in October this year, make that the beginning of your journey. If it's the 3rd time or the 10th time, or if it's the 100th time, even better. But yeah, you should be able to be excited about what you're doing. Like if you're a comedian, like Alex just is. I was almost going to say just Alex. If you're a comedian and you are not excited about your material, that's going to come through, right? Am I correct?
Oh yeah. And in fact, that's kind of a bit of a curse, is you'll get something that worked well that first time you told it because you were still laughing at it. And before you know how to just sort of turn that up, before you know who you are on stage and how to kind of like be in your funny mode, it only comes out when you're in, with the new stuff at first. And so especially as a beginner, you'll get frustrated that you'll have something that kind of killed that first time because what you thought was funny about it came through naturally. And then that kind of goes away because you haven't actually you haven't put that into you don't have the ability to perform that yet. You just have the ability to be it. And so you can't let that fade. It's gonna, if you've done your pitch a million times, but why are you waking up every day for this thing? Like get that across. So you gotta have something to center you, to remind you of your excitement before you give that presentation, so you can get back into it and get it out there, even if you're not feeling it at that moment.
Right, and that you'll be communicating that to your audience, and they will sense your excitement or lack of. And so this will play a part not only in this particular hackathon, but in general. If you start a company or if you're trying to get a loan for if you're going to start a restaurant, anything it is, you're going to be telegraphing your confidence, and they're going to pick up on that and say, you don't even believe what you're saying.
And Dan, you keep saying this, if you're going to do this, if you're going to do this. And let me just say,
I know when.
But if you want to do any of these, if you want to do any of these things, then the when should be now. And people talk about, and I'll just say this within the context of comedy, and you can extrapolate the principle from the practice. But when people talk about comedy, they come up to me, they've been watching the open mic, they say, gee, I'd like to do this at some point. And I say, well, it's an open mic. Do you want to go up now? I could throw you on the end of the list, or show up next week, or whatever. And they're like, well, I don't have my this together. I want to get my type 5. And it's like, the way you get your type 5 is by going up and doing it. This is the way I put it is this. The clock for when you start stand-up comedy is when you first step on stage and try to tell a joke that you wrote to a bunch of strangers. Yes. You could write for 5 years. You could read comedy books for 5 years before that, and you would still be at second one when you first open your mouth on that stage in your comedy journey. And I think that applies to a lot of other things. If you are sitting there going, I think I'm this, or I dream of being this, and you're not writing every day and getting feedback on that writing, then you're not a writer. If you're not doing this, then I've got a great idea for this. Well, who have you told it to? How have you tried to kick the tires on it? How have you tried to test whether it is? And as an Agile coach, I would see organizations do this, where they would have some new thing, and all of their sprint reviews to get feedback on the product were just internal stakeholders. Well, okay, then you're not developing a product because you haven't gotten any feedback on why did you even think this was a good idea. And the way I would tell it in class is I said, look, if you're relying on feedback from your internal stakeholders is like relying on your parents for fashion advice. Okay? Right? Like, yes. You know what I mean? The stakeholder, because they have experience. Like they have experience, but you're gonna show up, you're gonna show up to prom dressed in a powder blue tux. Your product is, if you do that, right? Yes, they may know some boundaries of what you should leave the house dressed like or not, but that's shifted so much. They have no idea what's actually like good or cool or represents you or anything like that. Use them for that experience, but you need real customer feedback or your proposed customers, and you need to get that and fail fast. I had a startup where I had a successful one where it was like a side project and we just went for it and it was great. We were lean without knowing what that meant. And then we had a big idea and we spent 3 years getting nowhere with something no one really wanted, even though they all loved the concept. And I spent most of that time writing a patent of all things, which went nowhere. So don't do that.
That is tragedy.
Yeah. And that's why then I got to the Vegas, and with the downtown project, I thought it was really cathartic to do the mentoring I did for the Mill, which was their micro incubator. And it was a lot of just saying, look, you've got $5,000, you've got 2 months in a co-working space. And what are you doing with it first? Well, I'm going to develop. I'm like, no, don't even write code. Like, get out on the street, like make a spreadsheet, simulate your app with a spreadsheet and your mouth and a phone or something. Talk to a customer as soon as possible.
There's a story I tell from someone I met during our reality show, America's Greatest Makers. His name's Mark Searle. He was at Berkeley Haas at the time, and they didn't do it, but America's Greatest Makers became America's Greatest Entrepreneurs, like behind the scenes.
Okay.
So he talked about pivoting and so on, and we've been talking about this the whole time. He said, go out we were in San Francisco for this part at the tech shop. He said, go out onto the street, describe your idea to people, get the feedback. And his story was they were doing, as part of his Berkeley Haas entrepreneurial classwork or presentations, they had a room full of people, and they had a person in the front who said, I have this thing, I've put a lot of my own money into it. It's a couch keyboard, essentially. So if you imagine... if you imagine a thing around your neck so that the keyboard is split on either side of your
like sternum, a neck pillow that goes further down onto your chest.
Yeah, and you're typing with either, hands on either side, and you could type while you're watching TV or something. And he said, I've spent like $100,000 or whatever it was, a sizable chunk of personal funds.
Yeah.
And so they said, does anybody in the audience want to use this product? And no one found it appealing.
Right.
Now, that's obviously a selected group, so who knows? There may be a percentage of couch potatoes out there. But he never did that. He was designing this product for himself, and he didn't understand that people wouldn't get it. Yeah. So the take home is like, you should get out there before you spend more than $10 and do this. And the other thing, the pitch workout room, as an example, that's mine. It's not my idea, not original, but part of the reason we were doing this was to enable people to, and as I described it to, I don't know if you know Liz Miele. She was here. I went and saw her show at the Wise Guys, and it turns out somebody I know here was her roommate in New York. He appears in some of her material sometimes. So he's like, he was there. I said, you're going to introduce me? He's, oh yeah, sure. So I talked to her and the other at the opening acts. And I said, I do this pitch workout room, and people are kind of balking at it. They wanted it, and I liken it to comedy, and they all agreed, like, this is how you do things like this. This is how you get up in front of people.
Yeah.
And they all agreed. Your idea doesn't go anywhere from the couch, right? You have to get up and start talking about it. So I got some validation there. But the take home is it must get sunlight or audience ears or whatever. Otherwise, you're not officially. And you've made this point already, but yes, exactly.
And in general, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to instill a bias for action in yourself.
Yes.
Whatever it is. I mean, I've been sort of changing. I've drastically changed sort of myself physically recently and getting in better shape. And one of the big things I did was I have exercises I want to do on different days. And the deal I made with myself is if it occurs to me to exercise, do it then. Like everything I have is something I can just do in the room, like sit-ups and things like that. And if I go, I should do sit-ups, I used to go, when would be the best time to do that? Right before I eat, blah, blah. No, I get down and do it right now. Now, you can't do that if you're in an office or whatever. But here's an example of bias for action, right? COVID hits. I'm in Alaska. Or I go to Alaska because the world was shutting down. I was supposed to be in the UK doing consulting. So I go to Alaska because there's supposed to be a comedy convention or festival there that then got canceled because of COVID. But I was like, they're not ruining my Alaska trip. And I get there, I'm looking at the modeling and everything, and we're getting the first data that shows this is going to be like 3-6 months minimum. Not, people were like, maybe it's gone in 2 weeks, right? At first, we didn't know that. Well, okay, I'm looking at the actual models. This is not going to be short term. So I start going, okay, how do we keep doing stand-up? And I think drive-in theaters. I used to go to those as a kid. I'm looking for transmitters. Everything's already like 2-week back order, right? The churches got to this before any of us were thinking about it, I think. And but what keeps coming up when I search for a radio transmitter is the little thing you plug into your phone that just goes into your own car. It's just it's just replacing the aux cord, because it goes aux cord and then transmits just to within your own car. And I'm looking things up, and the most powerful transmitter you can run without a license is whatever it is, in wattage. And this thing is that, because why wouldn't it be as strong as possible to get as clear of a signal as possible, right? So I just go to Best Buy, they bring it to the curb, they've got one left, and then I get some other comic who's willing to leave the house. It's a full lockdown at this moment. Just sit in the parking lot of the comedy club, and I drive my car around, and he's broadcasting just a song off of my phone, and it's working. And I was sitting there going, I'm out of luck. I can't buy any of these real transmitters. I can't do this. There's this thing. And I said, well, I got to give it a shot. And the reason was, it wasn't even much of a bias for action. There was no other option. It was this or probably never do comedy again. Now, what did I get out of that? Well, it worked. I didn't know how it was going to work. We figured out honking for laughs, which I talked to a guy in Denver. He said that's what he was going to try. We didn't know if anyone was going to show up. And I got national news coverage. I mean, we were turning people away because they couldn't fit in the parking lot, or they were angry that they had an aftermarket radio that turns out doesn't have a very good antenna if you got a new sound system, if you got some other option like XM radio or whatever. And it was massive. I mean, when COVID hit, every comic was screwed over except for me. It was
You
great.
were the one.
I mean, everything was coming up, Alex. I'm literally just getting calls from every major news organization they're like, went to my website to then find my phone number from Fox, ABC, NBC, everybody. So it's always served me well when I just try something.
To be innovative.
Always. To be innovative. And it's not like I do it every time, but I've done enough of doing that wrong. I'm doing it with TikTok right now even. I'm like, oh, I want to start posting more of these kind of math, science things, but it's easier to post the dumb stuff that I wake up with in my head. And it's like, no, if I don't get feedback on it, I'm never going to find that niche. And I know I've got something somewhere in it, but I've just got to take that step.
Sure. And to your point about doing it now, or when the notion hits, do it. I run into this in Vegas, in the greater Vegas area. Hey, hackathon. Oh, I didn't even know we have a hackathon every month here. Yes. Oh, I should go. I'd be interested in that. Okay. Our next one, it's always the fourth weekend of the month. And like, you're going to be there this month. No.
Yeah.
So there's the desire, which never manifests in action.
Yeah.
One of my least favorite stories that's true, a friend of mine from True Vision. So we were doing video capture before MPEG was. I don't even know you kids. If you had to do a 6-drive RAID 0 array just to capture NTSC back in the day, you have no appreciation for 4K in your pocket. That's insane. Anyway, so Adam was from the UK, and his wife. They had a child.
Okay.
Their first, and so we had a coffee at the Starbucks, of course. And he said, I have to send video to the grandparents in the UK. So there are 4 people eagerly awaiting video anytime, any day, any size. They don't care if it's, 20 by 20 pixels, anything. And he said, it's really hard to share video here. So his startup idea was called Share Video. And he got me and about a dozen people at his kitchen table, literally, to bounce ideas around. He got, I think it was like $50,000, which, but this was pre-YouTube, by the way, and that's why it's my least favorite story.
Right.
we couldn't agree on various things, and it was just like it turned into like arm wrestling, and you're like, why? I don't know if this is going to go. And so he said, I'm just going to give the money back. It doesn't seem like this is going to go anywhere. And of course, YouTube several years later, it wasn't like they were next 2 months later. But the fact is, getting people to show up at his house for essentially pizza. I don't think he spent any of his seed money. That's unheard of to me today here. And that's to your point. If somebody is interested in doing something, they just got to do it. Don't talk about doing it next month, or I'm going to start my diet, or I'm going to start my innovation. I'm going to do my startup next year. I'll wait. There's no time like the present, or as the Chinese proverbs.
You never have to do a lot of it. That was so putting boundaries and time boxes and sort of estimates and limits on things can make it a lot easier to achieve something. That's the other thing. We make it such a big thing. So that was my other thing is if I think of doing sit-ups right now, is there maybe a more optimal time of day? Maybe, but do I need to do the perfect amount? You know what I mean? I don't need to push. It's so much better to do 25 than 0. You know what I mean? I don't need to be thinking about doing 50 every time like that.
Yes.
And I think that's the other thing is the ask of going to that first open mic or taking that first step is just one step, right? I mean, this is the oldest part, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. It really,
absolutely,
honestly, I mean, I can't stress that more often. Failed entrepreneur story. My buddies at Caltech, they had a secret project. I dropped out. I took 5 years off before I went back to graduate, actually. But I'm still hanging around campus, and I'm begging to get on this thing because they're like, it's going to change the world. It's going to be the biggest idea ever. And they can't even tell me what it is. But I wasn't a software developer back then, so they wouldn't hire me. But then I learned what it is, and the way they described it, they were like, imagine if you had a digital wallet with all your business contacts in it, but it was connected to their digital wallets, so that if they changed their contact information, you would see that without them sending you any kind of alert. And I was like, what? And what they're describing was basically social networking, specifically for business like LinkedIn. But there was no word for social networking then because this was 2 full years before Friendster. Okay. Right, and they got funding. They built the thing. The reason you've never heard of them is that they were sure that this needed to be a downloaded, installed Windows application, super cryptographically secure, because they said there's no way people are just going to put their information on the internet. They made a big bet. They just really didn't understand the way people were going to react to privacy and connecting to people and who they were connected to. And because of that assumption that was never tested, they went nowhere. Then Friendster happened, MySpace, Facebook, everything. The same guy who had that original idea, this is more apocryphal. I wasn't there for this, but a couple friends said it was true. When MP3s first came out and we were just sharing them on Windows drives, right? It was just like everyone just put them all on the same one on the campus, and then you would go and look for it there. Pre-Napster, he was like, man, these MP3 files are so small. I mean, you could make a peer-to-peer file sharing network. And this is a guy who knew what those were because he's a CS major at Caltech at the time. Napster is what made most people hear what they were, because that was one, right? So he's basically describing Napster, again, a full year, maybe at least 6 months before the guy started even working on Napster. He's describing this. He then walks away, comes back, is like, oh, I looked into it. It's a lossy format.
Yeah. So is life.
Yeah, but he's seriously so the same guy was like, oh, I think that overestimated security concerns, overestimated quality concerns on audio, and was like, yeah, I don't think they're really going to take off like that.
Yeah.
If you have something, just get it out there.
Yeah. And first of all, the networking thing, they should have talked to Scott McNealy, famously pointing out that you have no privacy on the internet, so get over it.
Yeah, right.
But the take home, and I try to tell people this here in our innovation hub that is Greater Vegas. These ideas don't make themselves. We have instituted, speaking of Agile so many times, I call it Agile for Volunteers.
Yeah.
Which is a 2-week commitment. So a 2-week iteration. None of the overhead because typically we're not going to have stand-up meetings. You're not working. You're not at a 40-hour a week job.
Right.
So just commit to doing something. We have some user stories and the specs should be collaborative. So the very thinnest application of the original Notion, right? From the, where did they do it? Up in Colorado, wherever they were. So,
yeah.
I even tried to get Alistair Cockburn to look at it. He's like, I got to be honest, I'll read it, but I probably will just tell you to keep going because like I don't really have time. And I said, all right, fine. But all those original, the old white guys, right? Martin Fowler and Bob Martin and all that. But they're all talking about the old days of doing this stuff. And that when you add all this complexity, whatever. So I said, let's do a super simple, just commit to 2 weeks. You don't have to do stand-ups. We don't even have to have an in-person. You can do it at a coffee shop or remote. We have various remote tools for whatnot. I can't even get people to commit to that here. So to your point about you just got to do it, we don't have that activation energy yet, right? If we can bust out some enzyme action. So some sort of enzyme needs to be sprinkled over Vegas. It's not cash, but this notion that you can do it if you just, I don't want to quote Nike here. So,
Yeah.
but if you just do it, and this applies to everything, comedians. And I always tell people, have you ever cooked food for anyone? You cook food for a person, you put it down in front of them, you ask them what they think of it, they tell you, you add salt or whatever. But if you never let other people see what you want to do or what you want to make or cook or whatever, you'll never get anywhere. And it's remarkably frustrating to be surrounded by so many people who are kind of
Yeah, and almost no idea. Like, people don't steal ideas anymore. There's ideas everywhere. It's the execution that matters.
Yes.
I mean, that's why half of these startups getting bought, they're buying the tech, but also Facebook, Google, these places can't find people to hire. They've got, I mean, there's only so much brain power out there. And I mean, this is happening in comedy too. There's no more discovering anyone. The world lets you self-start so much in entertainment or wherever it is and put yourself out there so easily that even though it was already the case that a lot of agents and managers were exploitative, but now it's you let someone already succeed and then you go, right? You're a music agent. Okay, well, wait till someone blows up on SoundCloud and make them a better deal than the other people. There's no discovering anything like that out there. And so and this has kind of bitten me in the butt on, I'm being clean on this podcast, right? On the as a comedian, because I was trying to be the, road comic who you show up to the comedy club, you don't know who's performing. It's your local comedy club, but I'll make a room full of strangers laugh. I don't really want fame per se. It sounds like it's mainly got downsides, but that job has basically gone away. The comedy clubs are few and far between that are curating and a local scene and curating comics to go from doing that middle act of a half hour up to an hour or 45 minutes as the headliner. And more, they just are, hey, you've got 1 million followers on TikTok. All right, you've got this room for this time, and they just run the venue. They used to get phone calling centers, morning radio, morning TV, all this effort to promote. And now any promotion they can do is dwarfed by some social media star posting 3 times and just selling all the tickets.
Yes, which it sounds like I agree with you that this is not great. Like, it's a different way of the world working, but it's not as
well,
scrappy.
There's less gatekeepers in some way. I mean, it's all, I think I'm not begrudging it. I think it's a little more natural. I mean, there used to be all these gatekeepers, and now, as long as, it's not like the algorithm can't be unfair and various things can't be. There's levels of unfairness and corruption and stuff and anything. But, I'm sitting here trying to go, well, I've seen TikTok put content in front, or the algorithm put content in front of people that other platforms didn't, and give it a chance, and I'm getting feedback. And yeah, if I can't find people on this platform and all the others, they're enough to follow and sit in the room. I mean, what would someone going, this Alex guy's got it, see? And then kind of giving me a platform really do? I don't know. I mean, I think I should be able to, I think it's a little more democratized, and that's generally a good thing. There's still barriers that are frustrating, but there were barriers that were frustrating before that were more centralized and perhaps even less fair.
So yeah, the gatekeeping, the Mitzi Shores of the world, I'm sure, did much good, but some bad, to be sure. Pauly Shore, by the way, is here in Vegas and appears at the Wise Guys. I'm not plugging that, but I just,
Yeah.
What a strange.
Here's a hint. If you see famous comedians painted on the side of a comedy club, as they have at Wise Guys, and one is Richard Pryor, and one is Joan Rivers, and then the third person is Pauly Shore. That's because he owns that club. Not to bag on Pauly, but no one's putting him as one of the three greats on the side of something like that, right? That was he's part owner. He's one of the investors of that franchise of Wise Guys, which is out of Utah. They're a nice club.
Yeah. And they just opened another one. They just opened another one at Town Square, I think it is.
Oh, there's two Wise Guys in Vegas now.
Yeah, they just opened. The newer one is much more about booked comics, not so much open mic, and
well, yeah,
it's not downtown.
Yeah. What and I mean, and Wise Guys is also dry bar comedy. The guy Keith that owns the chains runs that too. So you see him book a lot of those dry bar comics, which is nice. I mean, it's the Mormon clean stuff. They blew up just because it was so easy to share with your coworkers on Facebook. You know, it's clean enough. I mean, it's objectionable sometimes. Still, it's it's got a political viewpoint sometimes, but it's they don't even want you talking about like. You can't even talk about booze. Like that's the level of clean that they're talking about, So.
Which I think is just like a time limit to, if you can constrain, and this applies to everything too, right? If you're like, I can do anything I want. Well, today the challenge is you have to do this style of comedy that's clean or all about dirt or hackathon topics or whatever. There's a time and a place where free for all is cool, but other times where you have to solve a problem or take on a challenge. And to steer it back to Hackathon slightly, to your point about like showing up at a comedy club with the live audience, see what happens. The same is true. I tell people like, these people, I have pictures of these giant events with 1,000 people that show up at UPenn for this one in particular. These are people on a weekend that say, I'm going to go just try some ideas out with some people. They may come with a team. They may come by themselves. And so you are kind of jumping in feet first, maybe. To see what you can do, just like if you walked into a comedy club or doing anything, like if you just go to a cook-off competition and you just go, I'm just going to cook what I know how to cook and see what happens. I think that's kind of exciting because it puts you in a different context that you're not used to and you get to see what you can do. And I always found that fun when I was at all these hackathons. I always told people I learned more than they did. Like I was there to help people with their projects, but I took away a lot more than they did. I think that's, and if you only say I should do a hackathon someday, or I should get up on stage and try my 2 minutes of humor in a 5-minute time slot or whatever, if you always talk about it but never do it, you're missing out. And that's unfortunate. And because you discover a lot of things about yourself. That's probably in Fight Club somewhere too, but.
Well, if you want to lead an interesting life, yes. And these opportunities for sure. Yeah. But I think you said something earlier about activation energy, and that's the key. And that's a very key thing. Like if you notice with the workout plan I was talking about, right? I'm like, okay, I've got a list of exercises I could do at any time at home, right? I've lowered the activation energy of not having to go out to the gym or even put on sneakers and go run around the neighborhood for most of these exercises. And then I also said, I don't need to set a personal best or do like the amount I did yesterday. It's just get down and do something. Once I'm down there, I'm going to go as hard as I can anyway, but it lowers the activation energy in my head of getting started to go. I don't have to commit to that. I just want to do something. Right. And so it's a little brain hack for me on that way. The way I would do that with open mics, when I gave the spiel I gave before, if they're not already at the open mic, if they just are like on a plane, hey, you're a comedian. Oh, I wanted to try that always. How do I get started? I say the first step is you go to the open mic and you watch. Or just sign up. Like if you're brave, I give them the spiel ahead of time and I go, just sign up. It doesn't matter. But if you're too worried about doing that, just commit to going and watching. You're going to see people bomb. You're going to be mortified for some of these people on stage. Okay. You're going to see them get off stage and live and survive and just be a person still and not be run out of town. You can show up next week. They'll be back there doing it again. Like you're going to see, like go to the chili cookout, see what the level is of things, but like maybe dip your toe in, but like at least experience it. I'd never even been to a comedy open mic. Like I I didn't know local comedy shows existed till I was doing it, basically. Like I'd been to those open mics I'd stumbled across, but I didn't even know this was an option. And yet in my head, I'd always been like, someday I'll be a comedian. Well, that's the way I'm 10 years in at 45. And I know a bunch of people, a lot of the greats started at 15 and like before they were even 21 or even 18. So it's, I'm not saying I have outright regrets, but it is.
Phil Hartman started very late.
Yeah. Oh, no, a bunch of, there are, look, it did me. I'm not definitely, I don't know. I mean, I think I would have been a little edgelord in my 20s anyway. And there would have been Twitter. I'd probably be canceled already based on old tweets or something, just because definitely my college sense of humor wasn't like, I'm not saying I was awful or racist or anything, but you know what I mean? It was very like, let's push the boundaries because that's funny. Look what I can get away with. I've matured and I think that helped.
Caltech math nerd, are you going to get up and say like, imaginary numbers? Come on.
I've got some math jokes. Are
they even real?
Are they? Yeah. Well, yeah, they're real and they're not real. So,
Don't be getting complex on me.
Right.
Sorry, kids.
No, that's the only straight math joke is the, some people like to date beautiful people, 8, 9s, and 10s. I like to go after the irrational ones, multiples of pi.
Nice.
I had a Canadian girlfriend. She was a 10 times I because she was imaginary. But of course, I was real, so our relationship was complex. Bam! All right, hey, okay.
I will tell you the mud math joke and along this lines is
this one.
I'm sure there are several, but one of my favorites because of the reaction it gets. The classic misogynistic, but you can apply this to anything. So you can say that that's a you don't have to be a person. It could be anything.
Okay.
That is a 1. And they're like, what? Like on the binary scale, right? Like that's the maximum you can get. It's 0 or 1.
Yeah. Right.
But if you say, and then if you want to go totally nuts, that's a 2. That's off the scale.
Yeah, right.
So,
that's
so these kinds of things can be
for binary.
Yeah. This one goes to 2. They're totally clean and they're fun and it makes you think. And so that I'm okay with that. Some of them are dad jokey, but
yeah, of course.
I will tell you, I was offered an opportunity to do open mic when I lived in Sunnyvale. I could walk very easily to Rooster Teeth Feathers. If anybody remembers, that's where Atari first installed Pong at then Andy Capp's. Now it's Rooster Teeth Feathers. So I used to go there once in a while, caught some really, really good shows.
And wait, did you know, actually, hold on, wait. I know that the guy who runs karaoke at Champagne's had claims to me, Doug, at Champagne's in Vegas on Maryland Parkway, claimed that there was whatever that place was had Pong. There was one that was a stand-up and one that was a tabletop. And he ran the bar that had the tabletop, and there was a chicken place or something with the stand-up machine across the corner, he said.
The Andy Caps had this sit-down, as far as I'm aware, and it was
broken.
Maybe,
okay.
As far as I'm aware, and it was broken. They had to call in Atari, I'm guessing, Bushnell. What's his first name? I'm connected to him on LinkedIn, ironically. Nolan.
Noel, that's it. Noel Bush.
Nolan. He was going to do something here in Vegas. I actually met his sons, plural, at some Maker Faire stuff. 2-Bit Circus is their company. Really nice guys. Okay. All very, very cool. But so Atari, he had to, I don't know if Nolan showed up himself, but he had to fix it because it was so full of quarters that they couldn't put any more in. So it was a big thing. But yeah, I don't doubt that there was another machine there, but Andy Caps gets all the credit. But anyway, so I was offered an opportunity to do stand-up open mic on Murphy Avenue in Sunnyvale. So one of the comedians ran a show every week at Fibber McGee's, and I could never quite get the gumption. Could never get the chutzpah, if you're Hillary Clinton pronouncing that word. And so I never did, but I always wished I would have. And so this all comes back to like just getting up and doing it. But at the time, I'm going to guess my humor would have been vastly different now that I've traveled the world a little bit and been out and about. And so, there's a time and a place.
Yeah, if you're,
But it's never too
I had
late.
more stuff to talk about. Oh, never.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's never too late. I just had more things. I feel like I was ahead of the game. You know, when I would tell people I was 3 years in, they would go, "Oh, really? I had no idea." Just because, you know, I had things to talk about. I think. I mean,
Right.
like, what are you going to joke? What truths are you going to uncover with your comedy when you're 19 that aren't necessarily a bit basic unless you're coming from a very unique background, you know?
Right, right. And so when I would go to those open mics that I did not participate in, I found, and it was younger, you know, first time, early, just testing it out. A lot of the humor would have a lot of expletives, a lot of just because it wasn't funny, except that they would end it with, you know, fuh or
Yeah, yeah.
with it. Yeah. So it wasn't inspired humor. It was just dirty, spouting off commentary, and then like, you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah, f that, this, and that. It wasn't inspired or really. It wasn't good. It wasn't good.
So
And when I see people trying that form versus like if they can get up there and be totally clean and say something really fun and funny, I'm like, yeah, that was cool. That's thought out.
So, How to Tell a Joke, uh, the ancient, an ancient guide to the ancient art of humor by Cicero. It's actually just Cicero's book on, I don't know if that's the way to buy it, but whatever Cicero's book on speaking was. I mean, the swear word, what is it doing in there? Because it is getting a laugh, right? But it's tying, he talks about like logos and pathos and stuff like that, right? And so it's giving this pathos, right? It's saying, I'm expressing an emotion and a frustration about this thing. But is that the best way to do it? Is that the most creative way to do it? And what you said before about constraints, I remember taking gifted and talented art class. I used to try to draw comics and stuff, and I sort of dropped that side of myself. But I remember his one rule was we couldn't use colored pencils. So he said, I know what you're going to do. You're going to shade everything perfect. You're going to get them on a nice point and everything. He's like, no, I want you using other things from other mediums where you're not comfortable, so there's some chaos in it, and you might actually learn to have a style or a voice or a technique. You know what I mean? Like, rather than trying to make things look perfect or like you've seen them before. And I think this is true in comedy, that a lot of bits that are dirty, swear words are hack. By definition, saying like F that is a very trite and well-worn way to be dismissive about something, right? Make up your own new swear word. Say some colloquialism, some weird thing that's from your past, or that's your grandma's slang or something like that, right? I mean, look at Norm Macdonald. He was always using all these like kind of old-timey terms and things like that, and it really spiced up and put this absurd, where is this coming from, what era is he even in, kind of spin on a folksy spin on everything he said. So
Sure.
Constraints can often be your friend, especially in a world where it's a big world and finding your niche is what matters. You don't need to make Facebook as an entrepreneur to be comfortable. You can have an idea, right. Like my business partner and I made something for basically you had to be a serious poker player to use it, but we had 95% of them using that. And it was plenty of money for two people, and I'm still getting some money in on that because it was a great thing to just have two people. We were able to make things at the scale we needed to. We eventually sold it off to a bigger company that has a whole suite of that type of software, and we still get kind of the residuals, which sure are smaller and smaller, but you don't need the biggest idea. Find something that you're passionate about and find something that you are really deeply excited about and that you know the market for, and then spiral out from there, for sure.
Right, right. Yeah, speaking of Norm Macdonald, the late, unfortunately, who among us did not look up what he meant by David Letterman has no truck for the sentimental? I was like, wow, that is an unusual, what is that? So yeah, I think being creative with words, there are so many, except for the is it 7 or 9? The Carlin list, but
yeah.
I should know that, but And the other thing, it doesn't mean you have to be outlandish. And I always tell this story as well. I was in Cork in Ireland, where Coder Dojo started, and I met one of the co-founders and whatnot. So I was there. I think it was an IBM sponsored site. So they had various rooms, and they had some parents were giving classes on JavaScript and whatnot. And there was a room with a couple of 10-year-olds working on there were more hardware projects, probably Arduino or Raspberry Pi based. And one of the kids, she looks up at me and goes, "I'm making a traffic controller." Now, you might think, well, that's been done, but not by her. And so you have to get started somewhere. And yeah, I guess if you're getting up on stage and you're using F-bombs and whatnot, hopefully you'll pick up on the fact that like, oh, I can be more creative than making a traffic light controller or using that language. But you do have to start somewhere. So there's like a line somewhere. But I always tell people she's going to be doing amazing things in 10 or 15 more years. She's 10 now, right? She's doing things that you have no idea how they work when you're driving. You're like, I guess I stop now. Like that's the level of understanding. Yeah. She's making that. So I think, I don't want to poo-poo too much on the notion of getting started. But yeah, that's how, the whole point here is the journey has to begin, the one step of the 1,000-step journey, 1,000 miles. Or as I like to say, the best time to start comedy was 100 years ago. The second best time is now, right? Or plant a tree or learn C.
Of course. And it's when you're getting started, you're going to be necessarily a little trite. That doesn't, that doesn't matter. And that's sort of why, that's in fact an extra reason to not go, I've got to write my type 5. No, you have some funny story that you've told at parties before. Get up on stage and do that, Like it's and then you'll learn if that even does anything. And let me tell you, I don't know what the equivalent is in innovation, but one of the biggest curses is that your first open mic goes really well.
Because I don't have that.
No, that happened in my first book show. My first book show, he threw me on. He was like, "You want to go last? Do 10 minutes," which was like more time than I expected, and I didn't expect to go last. And it was a hot crowd over at the Old Freaking Frog, and it went great. Like the joke I closed with has never went that well again. Like I was chasing how that felt for a good year and a half.
Sure.
Before I had my next good best set, and if that had been how I started, I would have gone, well, I guess that was bad. Good luck, and I'm never going to get that again, so I'll just quit. Maybe. I don't know,
Well, and on the innovation front, there's the Edison quote, of course, the 10,000 times how to fail 10,000 times, whatever, before he got whoever came up with the light bulb thing. That's
right.
But you have to try. If you never, you gotta. I have said to someone here, the days of fearless coding, right? Mm-hmm. And now you can just roll back your chain, delete and just reach, pull, or check out. Just try writing some code and see if it works. But try to understand it, right? Try things out. There's too many ways to prototype things. Same with hardware. You can 3D print stuff now.
With 3D printing and LLMs, you just don't have you don't have an excuse to say no to almost anything. I was in Vietnam. Yeah. I was in Hanoi and had a match on Bumble. Was like, oh, I'm doing a D&D game. And I was like, wow, I haven't played in 20 years. I'd love to sit in on that. And she was like, the DM's a new DM. They would be nervous. They said no. I was like, okay, cool. The next night she says, I have another gaming session tonight with a different group, but I'm sick and I can't make it. Do you want to fill in for me? And with 2 hours notice, I played D&D 5th edition, not having touched D&D since 2nd edition 20 years before, because I just opened up ChatGPT 4 and said, hey, I have this experience, walk me through creating a character and the choices I need to make. I need to play this afternoon and they want me to be a bard. And I made a Kender, which is something, shout out to Dragonlance fans, which is just books I read. There was not even an official module, but ChatGPT knew about some homebrew thing from it. And there's too many ways to run your own experiments and do stuff at a small scale that won't scale, but who the hell cares? That's a great problem to have, that your idea won't scale because it's as popular as it will be. You can solve that later once you have the interest, rather than thinking like I did with the patent thing. My first story on my first piece of backlog is come up with a database, a NoSQL schema that will scale to 1 million users with the data we think we're going to have on the thing that we don't even know if anyone wants. That is very
right.
silly.
And that I know, especially lately, people have been down on the whole clean code, and people hate Agile at this point because they're too used to the Scrum and the Safe and the other layers that have been placed on top of it that are driven by management and not by whatever. But if you look at the thinking behind those, one of my favorites that I've really taken to heart lately, especially, is Uncle Bob has one of his stories about they made a wiki, and they just kept trying to decide if they should use a MySQL or whatever. And they said, well, whatever, we'll just start with files, and so he said, we put off making the decision about the database until we realized we don't really need to. So that it's a file-based wiki. So that's fine.
Yeah.
So if you defer as late as possible some of these decisions, and you might find you don't need to make them or remake them. So there's a lot to be learned by you have to start somewhere. And I try to get this across in the hackathon context, but just in general, like you got to start to know if you should continue. But if you never start, you'll never continue at all. And the hackathon thing it's almost like going on the road and trying out material. Like if you have a day job and you're like, oh, this weekend is maybe the Space Apps Challenge or any opportunity, you're going to a different context. You're surrounded by different people. There might be some toys to play with. Like Intel would always bring a ton of hardware. Samsung was there. And there in the downtown project days, shout out to that time period, there were more people of this mindset here, maybe the innovation culture imported perhaps. So there were hackathons here in Vegas that were well attended, sponsored by Samsung and Intel and AWS, of course, reInvent. But people would show up and you're basically like, oh, I have the weekend to just go nuts. And whatever I build today doesn't have to ship, doesn't have to be manufacturable, but it might do something cool. And it might lead to something that is shippable and manufacturable. So you really just have to be the fearless coder or equivalent. And the same goes with food. Hey, I'm going to throw some chili peppers in this, whatever it is, right? And see if people like it. And if you never get that experimental itch in a scratchable state, then you'll just never really know. Same with comedy. You might have a hilarious joke that you've only told your coworkers, and they're like, you should get up on stage. Yeah, someday. Do it. Yeah,
do it. Do it 100%, or it'll never happen. Or don't do it and realize that's not what you want to do. That's the other thing is like I think it's what you don't want to do is carry around these little could-haves or maybes, right? Like recognize, should I try this or should I not? And I think it's always good. And again, lower that barrier. Lower that, what do we call it? Energy barrier?
Activation energy?
Activation energy, yeah. Lower
That's
that
what enzymes
activation
are for.
energy. Yeah. Lower that activation energy make it easy to take that little step. Make that, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Lower that activation energy by lowering your expectations of it too. What are you going to get out of this? Well, you're going to learn something, even from failure. You know, like you're going to dip your toe into this and learn something. And like, you know, one of my I mean, this is absurd, but I recognize it's absurd. One of my fitness goals, I'm like way lighter than I've ever been, even in high school. I've dropped 50 pounds, and I'm like, I should try dunking a basketball. I know I could grab rim when I was, I'm 6'1". It's pretty hard to dunk but I'm like, whatever. And it's it's an interesting goal to go. It's an interesting thing to check on the way as I'm like just working out. I got to have some goal. Do I think I'm going to be able to do it? I've looked at the math and I've looked at statistics. Probably not. Okay. But I need something that's like ambitious to try, because it would be awesome to do that after a life of like being bad at basketball, and my friend, like it would blow my friends' minds and stuff. And it's not completely inconceivable. And so it's a thing to go for. And what's the worst case that could happen? I increase my vertical by like 4 inches and I still can't.
Sure.
Okay, who cares? Right.
Or you keep trying for another couple of weeks or whatever pace you want to continue to try to get an extra.
Oh, I'm going
eighth
slow.
of an
Oh
inch.
no, I'm 45. Yeah. I'm doing the knees over toes guy. I'm like, no, my first 2 months is like, let's build up tendons and supporting muscles and reciprocating muscles. Don't be crazy about stuff. Yeah, don't know your limits and understand your constraints. With the cooking, don't poison yourself. Sure.
True.
But within those, take those little risks that let you know whether you even want to do this thing that you've been thinking you want to do, or that the world wants you to do. For sure. That's
see, that's why 20-year-olds have no amygdala. So they're like, oh, I'm just going to do it. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
I might break every bone in my body.
Yeah, they say, they talk about sort of the drop off of innovation with age. And I think it is, I don't think there's anything about neuroplasticity or the brain that's really doing that. I think it's that people, there's like in mathematics, like it's really exceptional to have any sort of major breakthrough even in your 30s with in some industries, right? In some scientific exploits. And I think it's more that if you've gotten, it's where you are at in your life, and it's sort of your day-to-day mentality and your own sort of risk assessment of that you're not, as you get older, you're not exposing yourself to new things. Society's usually putting you in roles where you're not exposed to new things as much, and you're not taking these little risks because you've kind of found your lane, and that means you're not going to discover amazing things.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's just an increase in risk aversion over time, probably just because the one I hear, and I'm not minimizing this reason, but the one I hear often is, well, I have a job and a family and I can't take a whole weekend to do things. We started doing month-long hackathons. So like, yeah, you work on it 2 minutes a day, but if you can find 2 or 3 people and you meet up at a coffee shop or whatever, just to get your juices flowing, as the saying goes, right? Just to ideate, because just like everything we've been talking about here, if you only think about doing it and then come up with excuses to convince yourself, otherwise, regret is hard. Especially as time passes. So
no, and that was a good point. The family is a valid reason. That is
sure.
just time.
Yeah.
But what I'm and I've made different choices from that. And it's not. I'm not saying that it's bad that anyone gets into that mode that's less risk taking or more risk averse. It's because you've got your nut and you want to protect it. You know what I mean? So it's more. But I'm saying that it's more about that limit is not something intrinsic to the fact that you have this number of years you've been on Earth or anything like that. Sure. I mean, I part of this fitness thing, I looked at the math on how many calories you expend every day. And people talk about like, oh, my metabolism went to crap after this age or this age or this age. And from all the research I did, I mean, it really hits a cliff at like 65, but it's kind of just a slow decrease with time. I think it's much more lifestyle. It's much more that you probably have, in high school, you were active. You're walking around a campus. In college, you're walking around a campus. I think a lot of, even just 5,000 more steps a day or whatever, like 10,000 steps a day is about 5 miles. That's 500 calories. It takes like 30 years of life to be burning way less than that. Like a lot people underestimate how much their mentality and everything changes, and they put a lot of their assessment of what they can and can't do on this sort of inexorable biological path that we see age as. And a lot more of it is choices they could change if that's what they want to do. Value family if you want to. Please don't leave them for a dumb idea that you haven't, especially one that you can test.
Sure. Well, don't place them at risk. But on the other hand, taking a weekend, I will posit, without knowing any better, I will posit that taking a weekend to explore some ideas and to proactively pursue, experimenting and whatnot, you bring that back home for the other, 28, 29 days of the month, and you're like, oh yeah. Oh, hey kids, you want to try you want to learn how to do this? You want to try that? I have the curse of parents who knew each other before they got married and they're still married. It was always like, my sister,
Yeah.
you want to convert our bathroom into a dark room for your photography? Sure. And she went on to be the editor of her school newspaper, and she's an attorney
Great.
today. For me, it was, you want another book and some more Legos for Christmas? Okay. Right. So there was there was a fertile field in which we were planting our notions, and my parents were like, "Yeah, we got some water and some fertilizer." So
Yeah.
so we were always encouraged, and if that's the culture of the family, I think that's ultimately beneficial. So it's, and I'm not minimizing it, but I think if it's always, well, I don't have time because I have a family, I would suggest pondering, at least pondering. I want to make time because I have a family. It's something to think about.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. That's yeah. Think about if you have this itch, right? If you're going, well, I can't do this because of this. There might be a very valid reason to do that, and you have to have balance in life, or it's going to hurt the things that you're putting. If you get monomaniacal about just your family, that might not be the best long-term thing for how you interact with your family either, right? If you're sitting there viewing them as the thing holding you back because they can't do this, you need to find some way to make that boundary so that you don't, so that all of a sudden not doing your dream isn't weighing on you and they're like, okay, why did you get so angry about these potatoes, Dad?
Resentment is a tough emotion.
Yeah, it is. And it creeps up on you. So yeah, don't, take care of yourself. And that might involve some you time wherever you can find it. I can't even begin to, my naive assumption of the constraints put on parents are why I'm not one. So I certainly don't know. And I know that it's worse than they all expect it to be. So I can't talk. Again, it's how do you take a small step that does fit into whatever your life is right now?
Well, and also, and by the way, we're coming up on, it'll be 2 hours soon, so I don't know if you have to leave, but, if you're still listening, if you're on your treadmill, go into walk mode and take a break. But the thing, I always tell people, I have the curse of knowledge or a curse of knowledge. I traveled around, so cross cultures, not as many different countries as you did, but certainly different just cities, different ways of people functioning day to day. Whether it's cold, it's too cold to go to a hackathon, but people showed up anyway. Some of the most successful, or you could see the most potential success in people was when parents would be around also, or when it was a fun activity, or it wasn't. It's obviously it's not intended to be work so much, quote unquote work. It's supposed to be fun. But one of my other go-to stories when we did America's Greatest Makers, which was a reality show that Intel did for makers. One of the people that participated was very young. I don't want to put too. I don't want to call her. It was a girl, but I'm not going to go into too much detail other than to say that her whole family was kind of in this mindset, very innovation centric and proactive, right? We need a 3D printer. Let's buy one. And this was 7 years ago. That 3D printing was not something you just tripped over. So they were all in as a family. And so the brother and sister were both of that mindset. The parents are tech savvy. You could see that, and you can see where that has led. And that makes all the difference, I think. And so if you, to your point, if you're using, I have a family, therefore I cannot, that's something to consider. That's a judgment call for them. But really think about like, hey, I have a family, let's all do it. I think might be worth thinking about.
I mean, my buddy, John Meacham, he is a genius. Like he learned Haskell he tried to learn Haskell twice and it didn't really stick. And then the third time, he's like, I'm just going to try and implement some of this cutting edge compiler research by writing a Haskell compiler. And that is now that's JHC. It's like the big cutting edge Haskell compiler project is what he started. And that's how he learned. Like he became a Haskell guru by doing the thing that he tried to learn Haskell in, you know what I mean?
Right.
But he, as a kid, his dad and him would do Heathkits, like they built their TV. And
Nice.
He literally remembers like he knew how to read circuit diagrams before English, because him and his dad were just sitting there soldering things together, and he's pointing at stuff as like a toddler. And you go in this guy's house nowadays, and it is a mad scientist laboratory. I mean, he has never not been someone who's experimenting with stuff and fascinated by science. And I think, like, there were a lot of people at Caltech that had academics for parents and relatives and stuff, and that was a world I hadn't been in. Like, I was the first person in my lineage to go to college. But part of that is just that they're in there and some level of privilege and things like that. But there was no legacy hire. There was no legacy admission there or anything, right? Like all this recent lawsuit to the Supreme Court, they used Caltech as a counterexample because they were going, oh, the Ivy Leagues work differently. It's like, no, look, this place does blind admissions on everything, and they don't have the same demographics as you. You're skewing things. So
right.
I think there's just something to the fact that those kids were presented with the opportunities for curiosity, whether it was just laying around because of their parents' industry, or whether that was a little more active. And yes, there's a privilege to being able to provide that to your kids and everything, right? I mean, I had a single mom. She's at work all day. She's then worn out at the end of the day. But she did what she could for sure, and I benefited from it. So I think if there's anything I'm trying to do with this pivot on social media right now, if there's any good that I think I could use the sort of ability to entertain and be somewhat captivating when I talk, that I've been working on with this whole comedy thing, it's not even to teach, but to just get people curious. I mean, I went back to school for mathematics because when I got there, when I got to Caltech, I didn't know what mathematics was. I remember asking my AP Calculus BC teacher, what comes after this? He said, linear algebra. No one told me what group theory was. I had a freshman friend in the group theory class. They tried to explain it. I didn't get it. And then I read Gödel-Escherbach, GEB. It was something I'd always heard was cool. I bought it. I was just in a bookstore in Chicago where I was living at the time. I only read the first half, but it sort of showed me what math really was, that it was like, okay, I'm sort of peering into the source code for the universe and all of logic. And then within that, you just make fun. It turns out there's fun puzzles in there, you know? And
right,
I went, and it talked about layer of activation. I went back to school and I'm going, am I going to be a mathematician? Am I going to solve a great unsolved problem or proof? Probably not. But I knew from dropping out and just trying to get jobs, I was being pushed toward being a programmer and already doing a bit of it. And I knew that learning this stuff was going to structure my thinking and my brain in a way that was going to be fundamentally valuable for anything that was sort of a STEM pursuit. And that's why I went back. But that would have never happened if I never picked up GEB and sort of got interested and fascinated by this thing.
Right.
And so parents, you can do that. Mentor anyone that's in a kid's life or anyone's life. You can present them with something that's just be openly curious. Don't BS them. Don't say things that are false. Be clear about what you know and don't know, but share, whether it's on social media or with your friends or with your kids, anything fascinating you find, because it could point them to something that if they find it out later in life, the activation energy will be too high and they'll never get to this point that could have been fascinating and brilliant, and they could have made something beautiful or innovative or world-changing.
Yeah, and like my parents taught me how to read when I was 2, and that was probably the best decision that we ever made.
Yeah.
I don't remember if they asked me, but they probably did. Like, do you want to learn how to read, or do you want to crawl around on the floor? And I was like, I'll go with read. But the instilling the intellectual curiosity and then feeding it is important. And it doesn't mean money. It does mean proactive attention to detail, I suppose, from all involved. But I really think, the more you're exposed to possibilities or options, the more you're likely to find a thing you didn't think about. As you said, who knew that you'd be interested in math, or who knew that you'd like cooking, or who knew that you'd like, any number of things. And the funnest, is that a word? The most fun hackathons I attended were the ones that were kind of free for all. The UPenn, huge event. 1,200 to 1,500 people. I don't know if they're still doing it. I honestly should check, but an immense event. And you had people doing all kinds of stuff. And my go-to story is a kid, college kid, made a ukulele drone controller. So he would play chords and strum along, and he had a little pickup on there, and it would control his drone. So he got it to do tricks and stuff. So he just said, I just always wanted to do it. So he did it. And completely impractical, probably. Maybe not. Who knows? But he had a weekend and he did it. So why not? So when you expose yourself, I jumped out of an airplane because somebody said, hey, you want to go skydiving? And I was like, yeah. Would I do it as a career? Probably not, but I've done it. And then to the Haskell, John Meacham, was it?
Yeah.
I learned C because I got a job programming C, which I had never done before, because they were like, well, do you think you can learn it? And I said, yes. And I got a compiler, Power C as it was. And I learned they gave me a PCXT, so running at 4.8 megahertz, I believe it was. They were all using EverX 286s. And I remember all of this because that was the job I had when it was 122 degrees Fahrenheit in Phoenix. And they kept the office at like 65, 68. That was an adventure, opening that door. But surrounded by computers, always hot. So they always had to cool the whole place. And I learned programming in C on the fly, writing some C code for this job I had over the summer after my freshman year at Mud. And I would literally look at stack traces and like, oh, okay, so here's where a variable gets put on the stack or gets put on the heap when I do a malloc. So I literally watched what the system was doing. And then when I had a job with Intel in Chandler, Arizona, doing pre-silicon validation, and we were watching emulated hardware, flip gates as they were, ARM instructions were actually. So this level of fascination, I guess I got early on when my parents bought me Legos and Tinker Toys, right? Like, oh, here's how the pieces go together. I think that's fascinating. I think if people embrace that or are exposed to it at least more at a hackathon or similar, like, oh, I didn't even know that that's how that worked. Could be anything. I've always baked cakes from boxes. I didn't know we could actually just put flour and eggs and whatever in a bowl and make our own. Interesting, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, I do have to go.
Okay.
And eat lunch here in a second. But maybe that's something for Vegas and innovation and hackathons also. Is what is special about Vegas? You already talked about. We've talked about the fact that you have all these tourists coming in, right? That you have all these people coming from other places. That's a special thing. But Vegas also has a bunch of entertainers and performers too. And I wonder if you could leverage the non-tech things as a sort of idea seeds and go, hey, we're going to have a hackathon where we get 5 burlesque performers to come and generate ideas for things and just talk about their frustrations and stuff, and we try and hack some stuff for them. And now you're leveraging this very Vegas-y thing into something that could be a bit more of an event, and is like a unique case to go, hey, can you innovate for this specific target market? Heck, you could make that a bit of a game show, actually, right? You just get weird, some weird group of people like and because we have conventions, so there's always going to be some crazy convention coming through. So you just talk to conventions and go, hey, can we do a hackathon in the corner of your convention for concrete people or whatever? I mean, the smaller ones are probably going to be crazier.
Sure. AWS used to do that with reInvent. It's basically, okay, you're coming for reInvent, come the weekend before. There's a whole hackathon. Intel was one of the sponsors, so we brought a bunch of stuff. I always say this, and then we'll wrap up with some Space Apps Challenge details, since we'll mention what you're doing. But I always say there's so many people coming here, and no one connects all these. Like, hey, there is a concrete show. We're not doing anything with people working on construction technologies or new materials or how to apply things, so application or new technologies for manufacturing, all this stuff. So it's like a wasted. They're leaving this on the table.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. I like what you're saying. We can talk about this more later. I will say, so the Space Apps Challenge is coming up 7th and 8th of October. Between now and then, I will be talking about it a lot. You have agreed to entertain the troops, as it were.
Yeah.
The finer points and details will be worked out. It will be a completely clean show, kid friendly, just like the hackathon itself.
Yep.
That's correct. Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
for the court reporter, the answer was affirmative. We're,
I'm on the record.
Yes, exactly. Yes, for this will be used against you. The event will be live in Vegas, if at all possible, assuming all the pieces come together, which they should. We are a city of performance at the end of the day. But we will be streaming this live to the world. So if you are listening to this podcast right now and you're in another place, because I'm posting this on the Slack for the ISAC, the International Space Apps Challenge, yes, you're going to hopefully be able to see and hear, even more importantly, the comedic stylings of Just Alex. Did I get that right?
Alex Just.
Alex Just. Oh my God, I'm going to keep flipping that.
Either way, it's if you want to follow me on TikTok and see what I'll be posting soon, I'm doing it's just jokes and sketches and King of the Hill memes and D&D stuff right now. But I'm gonna start posting more. I'm gonna start posting more educational STEM content. Actually, kind of walking through Gödel Escherbach, I think, a little bit, since I'm trying to inspire people the way I was inspired. And there's actually no audio book version of that, it turns out. So I'm going to try and start a little study group or something. But I'm toying around with this idea of open curiosity and just trying to create a little bit of a movement of people just trying to put things out there as ideas and be open about their enthusiasm and these little ideas, and then saying, hey, you take this, here's what to look up next, and then you share what you learned. Let's just explore and dive into stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's so many ways to teach yourself now. But I think if you do that in a vacuum, you can actually go down the wrong path really easily. I think you need to have some ability to get a community of experts and actually learn things. But it starts with going, hey, I learned this. Isn't that cool? And inspiring others to then dig deep and challenge you.
Yeah. And the value proposition for the experts, the mentors who participate is, as I always say, I always learn also. Somebody would come up with something and they're like, could I do this, this, and this? And you're like, yes, here's how you would connect those things. But I never really thought about, it's a two-way street, and it's an opportunity to teach the children well, as the song goes. But the children are our future, something like that.
Yes, yeah.
But
teach them well and let them lead the way.
Write that down. So the end of the day, also, I believe Alex is going to be a judge if possible. So
I'll be hanging out.
The details of how the judging works, I think it might be the next day, because this runs until midnight on the 8th of October. So all pencils down, 11:59 p.m. in your local time zone and all that. So, and then there'll be some local judging. And then the thing that I think people are not getting that NASA has to be more clear about also is that this is a progression. So there's another round, and then eventually you end up actually traveling to another planet, I think, or something like that. So there are winnings to be had if people are serious about this. So you can either go for fun, or you can actually go for prizes, or both. So there's something for everybody. But I'm really hoping that Vegas embraces its innovation nature. I saw that someone thinks it's in our DNA. I don't know if that's true, but it's certainly, well, we won't have to say where DNA ends up sometimes, but it's on there somewhere. It's on the mirror. I don't know, somewhere. So hopefully that will actually materialize in the form of participation, and Alex will be here to make it fun. Is space funny? And we can end on a good closer, a Homeland transfer joke or something.
Oh, is space funny? No, Ooh, do I have just a space joke? I should have lots of space jokes.
I just put you on the spot. I know. I'm sorry.
I know. Well, no, I don't even know if that's a good title for this. I feel like we ended up talking a little bit more about what we can learn from comedy and entrepreneurship and speaking. I don't think we talked about space and humor that much, so much as innovation.
We didn't.
So much as innovation and that creative spark. So I think we want to make the title for something for that. If you want jokes, you can just look at my social media. There's a bunch of stuff on there.
The title could be Sparking Oi. No, I'm just kidding. That was for my Jewish friends. I'll figure out some other title. But yeah, okay. I've jokingly said that the Homeland transfer can be funny. You know what that is? the minimal energy.
Yeah, I looked it
transfer
up because
for-
yeah. But I don't know what you're going for.
It's not that funny. It's energy conserving, but it's not funny. That's
No, I
all.
don't think
That's
it
all.
is.
That's all we can say, I guess.
Let's just end on you bombing, so it's not me bombing. All right.
So there I was on the moon. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much, Alex. I'm just going to say
Thank you for
Alex,
having me.
just Alex Just. And no, Alex Just will be joining us for our event. And as well, elsewhere, I'll put a link to his website in the show notes, which nobody reads because all these podcast sites mess up show notes. But it will be in the show notes. It is, Alex, if you would say it, your
Alex
website.
Just. Oh, my website, jokesarefunny.com.
Jokesarefunny.com. No spaces, no dashes, underscores, no nothing. Just jokesarefunny.com.
And then at Just Alex Comedy on all of the public desperation portals known as social media.
So just Alex on social media, Alex Just on this podcast.
No. It's at Just Alex Comedy.
See, Alex Just Alex was so much better, I think. Anyway, I will put all this in the show notes for sure,
Yeah.
and I will be
No
mentioning
one goes
this.
to websites anymore. It's all just social handles. So.
Which is a shame, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. I thank you again, and I'm going to end this podcast by thanking you for listening and looking forward to seeing everybody online or in person. Space Apps Challenge, October 7th and 8th. Thank you, Alex.